this section, I hope I really irritate you.
Not yet.
And I hope that, you know, as we dig in, because the real answer is it takes you communicating with your representative to say, this is what's wrong, and this is how we got to get through it. Now let's work together with the other states. And it's complex. I'm not saying it's an easy thing, but there are some people that have been working through the process, at least, to bring it together. You know, I have to look at actions. And I know we're running close on time, so I want to run hard on this. Is the action, and have time for questions. Actions to restore. You know, this liberty is fading away. Fading away. It's important. You know, and with that, I got questions. But for you tonight, I only have 2 questions. Just 2. 2 simple questions to start with. My first question is, do you, with all your heart and being, I mean really, all your heart and being, want to restore our liberties as the founders and the framers intended? You have to answer that yourself. You see, all your commitment. Are you in your deepest being willing to commit to do what is necessary as the signers of the Declaration of Independence did? And we talk about that. A lot of times, you know, especially in groups like this, we talk about it, and it's like, oh yeah, you know, the Signers' Declaration, what was it? Our lives.
Fortune.
Sacred honor.
Oh yeah, you know, we can say it.
Do I have to shoot a British guy with a musket?
Hey, you know what? We've had that conversation before. But what are we investing? What are we investing? So those are 2 questions you got to take away and go answer. You know, because the rest of what I'm going to talk about now is going to take and be dependent in the long run on how you answer those questions for yourself. You see, the actions to restore is a challenge, and it begins in many ways with the precinct committee person. You see, they used to take and get together in the streets. They used to walk around. They used to talk to their neighbors. They used to take and engage in the conversation. They got together. They invited people into their house, into the public square. You know?
Could you imagine them doing it at Starbucks today?
It was called what? The Liberty Tree?
Yeah.
It was called the Tavern? It was called the Post Office? Yeah, that was their Starbucks. It was where the community gathered together to have real conversations, not frivolous, meaningless chatter.
Yep.
You know, precinct committee people, I know you got a bunch of them in here. Guess what? You're the first elected official in what? Your neighborhood. Precinct is just, you know, a bunch of neighborhoods gathered together. That's who you are. You're elected. You have responsibility. You're to ensure that you have access to voter vault or some other type of data system that your state makes available to you, that the party makes available to you. Voter vault, and I don't know what you call it here in Arizona, voter vault, man, that's a powerful tool. You can sort, you can figure out who's in your precinct, who you go talk to, how you walk your neighborhood. You know, I was teasing somebody the other day about, oh, I know, Lou's going to be a streetwalker. I told Jan, you know, he better bring home good money. But the idea is talking to your constituency. It's your constituency. That's what it is. You know, walk it. Introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Schmuck. I'm here just to let you know that I'm your representative. You are? What's that mean?
Don't ask now.
Most people think you're schmuck because you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Ask questions of your constituents. You know, you're doing that to John, or you're doing that to this young man, or you're trying to do that to, what's that flake's name? Oh. Because you're never McCaining it. He won't answer questions. So, you know, and in Washington State, you know, they've got the gal in tennis shoes and, you know, somebody that can't do nothing. Oh, can't do well. That's right, same difference. Anyway, you know, same problem. But the idea is that you're elected, you go meet your constituent, you ask them questions, and let them ask you questions. You're representing them. Guess what? Inform them on local issues, on things that are happening locally. What's going on in the community? It means you need to know what's happening in your community. What's happening in your county? What's happening in your state? The national stuff will bubble out on its own. Yeah. I used to, you know, Kathy and I walked precincts every time, you know, we were precinct people. I was a precinct man. Walk the precincts, you learn a lot. You learn of what the interest is, and you get to know people all the way down to the personal level. Guess what? That's what the early politicians did. Oh, they weren't politicians. They were elected representatives of the people. Right. They were in direct contact. So when you go vote as a precinct committee person in your LD, you should be voting with the responsibility weighed heavy on your shoulders that you're actually not voting some political party stuff. Right. You're representing those people in your precinct. You know them. You can walk back and look eyeball to eyeball with them and tell them, you know something? I hear what your issue is, your concerns. I'm going to go back and take that back, and we're going to roll that up the hill. We're not going to let the stuff roll down the hill on us anymore. We're going to roll it up the hill. Because we're tired of getting it rolled down. Build trust and confidence with the local issues. You see, that's where you're going to take and build to those state and national issues. When people can trust you on local issues, and you can identify those that, you know something, they're going to jack up your water bill. And you know why? It's because, you know, those other guys down the street are getting a new main in. What does that mean to you? Whoa, wait a minute, you know? Or, you know, over here in Glendale, they want to put a new dome on the spaceship. What? How's that going to affect your property taxes? Well, you know, that's probably what it's good for. Here's the one. Folks, in your neighborhood, pay attention to your young folks. Pay attention to young folks, young married folks in the precinct. Find out what's going on. What are they thinking? What are their needs? How do they view? They are so busy sometimes, they don't have a clue of what's going on and what's affecting them. And yet, you know what? They're paying the same taxes you are. Sure. If they're a homeowner and they're in your neighborhood, even if they're living in an apartment, they're being taxed by virtue of what that apartment owner is being taxed. It's all in their rent, you know? But that's a whole nother discussion on stuff, property ownership and stuff. So anyway, you know, this is what it is as a precinct person. Fact is, this is what Obama did. His community organizers were the Democratic precinct people as well as others. You see, he used it before. He's going to use it again. They're going to use it right now, this year. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Precinct people, great project. You can look it up. Actually, it was formed and founded here in Arizona. I'll tell you, it's some of the best training and information for precinct committee people that I've looked at across this country. Exceptionally well done. If you're a precinct person, you don't go look this up, you're remiss in your responsibilities. All right, I'm bringing it home. Grassroots, Tea Party, citizens. You know what? We don't need feel-good Tea Party meetings. It's not about coming in, getting filled up. It's like, you know, I'm going to offend everybody today. It's not like, you know, going sitting in the pew on church, getting filled up on some message and then going home and, you know, hitting the crap table, having, you know, half a gallon of something, and on and go. You get what I'm trying to say? I mean, that could be the same thing here. Get filled up, go home, woo! charged up for Wednesday night, and come Thursday morning, anyway. That kid, this dimmed out, but that kid was looking up. He was looking passionately up, not just to stay in line, but he was looking for the guidance of that older person. What do I have to do? Feet on the street. I don't know how many times you've heard me say this. It's feet on the street. That's what we have to do. That goes back to that commitment that our founders did. You know, they just didn't go to convention, write it up. They went home and got their feet on the street. Work with your precinct person. Find out who they are. If they're not doing the job, say, you know what, John, I'll go out with you. I'll go help you walk the precinct. You know, let's go do that together. If not, say, John, you know what, you have access to Voter Vault, and, you know, I know that you're busy doing some other things, but you know what? If you help me with that good walking list, I'll go walk the precinct for you, and I'll come back and tell you what's happening. You know? Wow. That becomes powerful. Becomes powerful. The key to organization and unite is coming together locally for liberty. It comes down to that very, very simply. We can talk about all sorts of issues. Like I said at the very beginning, the founders had all sorts of issues they were dealing with. You know, I could take you through just a mountain of issues. But it was about liberty. Coming together about liberty. That solidified them. Educate and inform. Whole classes. You know, the best way to get educated and inform somebody is to hold a class, do something, invite people into your home. Geez, you know, it goes back to, do I know my neighbor? How do I even communicate with them? You know, there's two things. This is fabulous from NCCS. Even if you did the 5,000-year leap, you know, there's guides on that. My favorite is Making of America. Now, NCCS has been producing that for years. They got a great buy on it, but I know that it's been updated from my friend Dr. Kimber, who was Skousen's son-in-law. Skousen, before he died, had 600 changes to put into Making of America. Well, they just released from the Thomas Jefferson Center that whole new version of it. So I know people that are doing classes of Making America, inviting their neighbors in. What a better way to learn about our country and how it was made than to facilitate it yourself. Geez, some challenges. Demand, this one, I'm sorry, this is going to irritate you. And if it doesn't, then you know what? It should. Demand with congeniality that your pastors, priests, and rabbis become black robes. I mean, demand it. You need to do this. And you know why? Because you're not fulfilling God's purpose in your life. You're not fulfilling God's purpose for this nation. You're not fulfilling what our founders did from the first great awakening. And that's a whole nother discussion, but I can prove it to you that it was engaged. Fostering citizens' foundational principles preached and educating the congregations. They need to do it. Not just once a year on Pulpit Freedom Sunday or whatever. It needs to happen more often. I got thrown out, basically, or had a real run-in with a pastor one time, but that's another story. Develop the X, Y, and millennials with founders' principles. Vera had a great crowd last Tuesday of some of the younger generation. I mean, the one kid was, what, 14? 12. 15. He just turned 15. Wow. I'm telling you what, he was like a Samuel Adams. He was like Fisher Ames. He was like, several others. This kid was sharp. I mean, he was talking about court cases, and he was talking about constitutional perspectives. And, I mean, there were college kids there as well. And I'm sitting there going, 15, 22, 15, 19, 15, 23. I'll go with the 15-year-old. But, I mean, they were all sharp. But the point being is that we have to help facilitate that. And that's, let's see, we don't have a lot of those folks in the room at the moment. We need more of them. All right. Candidates, I don't know or recognize any elected official in the room. Yeah, candidates. We've got candidates. Hey, this is for you. You just brought it up. Shane was saying, what about the state constitution? Understand. Don't just flip through it. Understand its history. Understand its formation. Understand your state constitution as well as the federal constitution. You know what? You got to take an oath to it. You got to uphold it. You got to protect it. I talk about that at the federal level, in the other talk that I give. But you got to commit to it as a candidate. You got to commit to it. Understand the process and template as we've been talking about for the compact, as well as what Article 5 is really all about. Review the other options. Listen to the opposition. Get your head straight and clear on it. Because if you're elected to the House of Representatives, guess what? You're the one that the rest of the people in this room are going to be trusting to do what they think is the right thing to do, and you have to know whether it is or not, and you have to be able to articulate why you think it may not be. But you know what? If your constituency says, you know what? It's time. Let's rock and roll with this puppy. You better know why, how, and how to get it done. And what you're going to be up against. Take the constitutional classes or seminars. You know what? Protect liberty by getting bad laws off the books or amended so they become proper. You know what? That's what it's. We have too many laws. There's too many of them. And they keep messing with them to make more. And you know what? Don't count your successes at what you get past. There's too many people. You got this other dude. What's his name? I looked at his voting record and I did a review on that. I was asked to do a review on his voting record from a constitutional basis. I ran through his voting record and I said, this guy's he's a flake. Or is he a McCain? Something like that. But anyway, I said his vote was not solidly from a solid constitutional perspective. So I was able to help someone understand that. But the thing is, you don't need to get more stuff passed, and don't count that as your badge of honor. Right. It's not. Actions to restore. This is it. Very simply, folks. That's it all lumped together. For candidates and representatives. Again, it's only my opinion. All right, here we go. This one hits churches and synagogues. Stop being confused. You can say and do a whole lot more than what you believe you can. And you know what? In my opinion, oops, there's that my opinion. My opinion is get rid of your tax-exempt status. I never saw that anywhere in scriptures that, your tithe should be something that you're exempted for, even your property and all of that. I mean, that was a whole Lyndon Johnson screwball thing because, the churches came up against him for his improprieties. Here's a tough one. Introduce foundational principle classes to your youth and the adults. Whoa, that goes back to being a black robe. Takes here, understand the first great awakening in the context of the foundation and the American Revolution. See, the first great awakening were sermons that were preached about liberty. And if you don't have your God-given liberty first, then you know something? You can't put in perspective any other form of liberty. That's right. And it's defined both in the Old Testament and the New. I'm sorry, it's there. A lot of people don't preach it because they don't know it. So get educated on it. Study the political sermons of the founding. 2 volumes. I've read them. They're phenomenal. You know what? Most preachers don't even know they exist. And they've never studied them because they're as much a progressive as the progressives. All right, here's the one that's really going to hurt. If you're a deacon, an elder, any deacons or elders of your churches or congregational leaders? Okay, folks. All right, you guys. Learn the truth. Learn the truth about what you can do. You know, I go in and I've met preachers and rabbis that want to be black robes. They want to be that, but you know what they tell me? I'm sorry, but my board won't let me. I'm sorry, I can't because my elders won't let me. I'm sorry because the deacons would get all upset if I did that. And I say, well, grow some kahunas. Kathy's heard me say other things. I have a tendency from time to talk Navy. God forgive me. And I've said that to pastors straight up. I take them through a whole different discussion, but that's another story. Man up. Vote your values. If you believe that the Bible or the Torah to be true, stop being hypocrites. We have so many churches that are out there going, yeah, I'm a church, I'm doing this, I'm preaching that, and I'm da-da-da-da-da, and I'm love, and all these wonderful things, and then they are voting for everything that's immoral. On the basis, the very fundamental basics of God's principles. 10 Commandments are universal. They talk about the relationship between man and God and man and man. It's a very fundamental basis of government. And this is where I freak a lot of preachers out. I says, you know, if you say that God, you know, and Jesus is a king and, you know, God understands everything in the universe, then that means he understands government because he ordered it.
Right.
And you know something? I can bring a lot of that out, a lot of different places. But the 10 Commandments are universal, and yet we have so many people that say, yeah, I'm a solid Christian. But they'll go out and they'll vote for all sorts of things that are just left off the map. I mean, left
Way off
the map. Understand that Judeo-Christian values are being persecuted now. Real-time story. A friend of mine who I helped campaign for, Shahram Hadian, was born in Iran, Muslim, went to Canada. They escaped because his father was high in the political regime of the Shah, escaped from Iran, went to Canada first, then he came to the United States 13 years later, became a citizen. Within that process of that 13 years, he became a Christian. So he rejected Islam, okay? Became a pastor. Ran for governor of the state of Washington the last election cycle. I was invited to a number of his campaign rallies to speak as Samuel Adams, and we talked about liberty and principles and all of the things that are important in that regard. Well, he lost, obviously, that election to a communist. And yeah, he is. Inslee's a communist. He's just flat out well known. He's a communist. And what he's doing now is what he goes around talking on Chrislam, where a lot of the Christian churches, and this is where I go back to the last bullet on vote your beliefs, because you can't mix Christianity and Islam. The two do not mix. And so Shahram, having been a Muslim and being a pastor, he can speak to that. Well, just this past week, he was going to Canada to talk, and at the border, the Canadians stopped him, detained him, and said, the material you're carrying is illegal in Canada. You can't bring it in. And if you try to bring it in, the next time you come up this way, we're throwing you in jail. Okay?
Going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Because we have a friend that comes from Israel, and he stopped it. He has to nail it ahead of him
Yeah.
where he's speaking.
Right. And so the church that Sharam was going to go speak to in Canada is now under investigation for hate speech by the Canadian government. All happened last week. So if you don't think your Judeo-Christian values are under attack, and that's just one real-time example, there's many more. And it doesn't have to be in another country. You know what? You're hearing a lot of the other. It's here in America now. I don't know how anybody can tolerate it. I don't know how we're tolerating it. But you see, anyway. You know who this guy is? I don't know if you can see the picture all that clearly, but this is a fellow that stood up in the church, Lutheran church he was in Virginia. He ripped off his robe and he took command of the troops. You ever hear of Muhlenberg? Yeah. He had a true black robe. He ended up becoming a general. He was at Yorktown. He's fought many campaigns as a preacher. And then he went back to Pennsylvania and assumed the pulpit. And you know what? Even while he was in the pulpit, guess what? He got elected to Congress. Gosh, a real preacher in Congress that would go back to the pulpit and preach. Geez, is there anything here about God and government? Oh my goodness. What's a real black robe? The examples were there over and over and over again throughout the first Great Awakening all the way through the Revolution. You know what disgusts me is that we have our religious leaders that are Christian or Jews in the military being told they can't teach and preach according to what their faith dictates. When George Washington said, I want you to, Mr. Preacher, because I want morality and virtue in and amongst the troops. Because if we don't have that, we won't be effective, and we can't have God be on our side to win our victories for us. Anyway, folks, go and act. Simple. Go and act. Can't challenge you anymore. Nobody left. Wow, I'm impressed. I thought I'd chase somebody off. Use what you know. I heard a statement last night, a little bit previous to that, but really sunk home to me last night, is there's too many people that are getting ready to get ready. Getting ready to get ready. Yeah, they're always getting ready. Oh yeah, I got to get ready so I could go do this. I got to get ready to go do that. You know what? Use what you know. Fail forward. You know? Learn what you don't know. That's okay. Because when you fail forward, you're going to find out what you don't know, and guess what? You're going to go figure that out. So now you know what you don't know, you're going to go learn it. And then you're using what you know. Simple. That's what we do. Engage your neighbors, feet on the street. Because if you don't, he'll do it again.
He will again.
He'll put his foot all over us. And so will that other snickerdoodle sitting there in the room with them. Feet on the street. Local, state, and nation. The enemy started that whole process that way. Vera, what's the name of the book out of Colorado again?
Blueprint, how the Democrats
Yep.
won Colorado.
How they won Colorado. The blueprint. Read it. They started local. Started local. Did a whole bunch of other things, but it was starting local.
We're doing it in Texas right now.
They're doing it in Texas right now, correct?
You see where most of your liberals live?
Yep.
Right around Kaplan.
Yeah. So, you know what? I have to end it with this. You, the people, are the states, and you have a right to call a convention if you so see fit. Is it easy? Is the process easy? No. Is there a template that is historically, in my opinion, sorry, there's that opinion again, but in my opinion, there is a template that is historically foundationally correct. And you can put in then the language to whether it's the 17th Amendment or whatever other ones that Levin talked about even, or you can go back to the one that, you know, I've talked about for years, is the Liberty Amendment that has several actions within its context. But you can do that. So with that, I do want to thank you, and I hope you got some challenges as well as some information. Does that give you a lot? I hope it gives you something. So, how much time do we have for questions? All right, John, grab the mic and you be the mic man. Because
The mic man.
You're the mic man, but so you get to ask the first question. And no large statements.
All right, then. Regarding the, you were discussing the compact, apparently it is what it is. In other words, you've already discussed the substance of this amendment. So we're not differing over, well, how are we going to word this and what exception are we going to make here? We already have something that's been hammered out. You voted up or down, yes or no. So if I think, well, this amendment is a good idea, but it's too weak, well, my choice is yes or no.
Right.
Now, I could say to myself, well, you know, there's way too much wiggle room. I don't think this is going to really save us any money. They're always going to be able to do this. They're always going to be able to say that. But if we go through with this template and then we see in practice, okay, this didn't work. We come back, use the same template with a stronger amendment. In other words, we're not limited by the fact that we did it once. Well, we can never do it again. We,
Correct. 10,000, how many odd times? 11,000. Okay, so to your point.
I just wanted to clarify that the amendment is there, and we're not discussing the wording of it. It is worded. Are we going to proceed with this or not, yes or no?
And that's what the compact is all about. And that's what, you know, it goes back to what we were saying and what this gentleman back here was mentioning earlier, is that you have a committee ahead of time. You have some people from the various states, which has happened and is happening for the other amendments that they want to bring forward, that these committees that are recognizing the ills in the government are coming together and hammering out that context and then the content. And then they're bringing that and wanting to say, okay, let's put it in the template. So it's then the process, and then the states, through the legislature, has to agree. And that gets then to the job of we the people, we the citizenry, having to take and get the right people in the legislature to do the will of the people. Okay? Anybody else? That gentleman back there again.
You're the mic man.
You're the mic man.
I don't know how much line you got to get part of the get.
I don't need the mic, I can talk about it.
Well, we want to capture you also on the, with the sound system, because you have good questions. That doesn't mean I can answer them with good answers. Well, we didn't know we had a snake here to wrestle with.
One more.
That's good. All right, close enough, John. He's got,
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay, this template, when and who put it together?
Well,
Is the first question.
yeah, from what I understand, there was a committee of various legislators that got together, and the Goldwater Institute was the one that helped bring this together.
How recent, though, is my question.
You know what? I didn't, be honest with you, I didn't look at the date at it because I just started grabbing this, but the website, that if you go to the website on the Compact America, all of the detail is
Okay.
there.
Now,
Discussed for a couple of years.
okay,
Wait a minute, I didn't-
Now-
I'm sorry, I didn't.
now, to follow up with that, if it's current and it was more applicable when they put it together to, let's say, the founding of a nation rather than restoration, we were looking at a fledgling country that was not evil or trying to destroy the nation. We were trying to put something together. Right now, we have a well-oiled machinery, well-financed machinery, and an evil machinery in Washington that discounts the Constitution as it's written. So my question is, if they're going to discount the Constitution as it's written, what keeps them from not discounting any amendments that we may be able to successfully put forward? What's the enforcement that we have? I mean, talk is cheap.
Oh, absolutely agreed. And so once it becomes, so the process, that would be then proving an absolute breakdown of any semblance of our constitutional form of government. If Congress says, the heck with you, we think it's a bunch of baloney, and as John McCain called the censure, crazy, you're nutty people, and all of that. So if he takes that attitude all the way through to when the petitions are put in and they're rejected, then, you know, when I showed that picture up here, it's not just nationalism, it just moved all the way over to statism and tyranny. And then that comes to a whole different discussion of what we, the people, need to accomplish at that point. Okay? I'll just, you know, be frank with you. So that's absolute tyranny when they violate what the Constitution is saying we have and the states have a right to do. Okay? Now, once it is passed, as any of the other amendments have been passed and ratified, it becomes then part of the Constitution and is enforced as such. So to that extent, understand your argument that they're not enforcing the Constitution as we expect it to be, but that's then where, again, your feet on the street have to make that difference. And I know you're saying about the machine, and that is something that just that gets me about all of the other distractors. Is be, oh, we can't do that or do that or do this or do this. You know what? If we, the people, have been rising up to the extent that we have from all of the different groups, and I've been traveling the country, interacting with the different groups, if we really get the feet on the street and communicate to our neighbors what the heck is going on locally, and then they'll bring up the national stuff. You know what? We can get people more riled up. When I talk to neighbors as a PCO, we got more engagement because we had personal interaction. Someone was showing interest. It wasn't just this monster out there. No, it brings it right back to where it should be on self-governance. That's my hope. Can it break down? You know, the Anti-Federalists warned about that. They talked about that. They said that the machinery at some point in time can overcome what the citizenry may want to do. You know what? Then that's what Jefferson commented on later. What did he say? I'll leave it with that one. Ted. He said something about patriots.
Quick, maybe a minute or so on nullification versus COS. Should we work on them concurrently in case the
Sure.
convention doesn't work?
Yeah, but the Supreme Court and even, you know, one of our best friends on the court, what's that guy's name? Yeah, him. The Scalia. I mean, he even said that it's moot. It was settled during when? It was settled all the way back at the time of the Civil War, because that's what nullification was all about. That and Scalia, Kathy and I were at a time with Justice Scalia, and that question was asked to him about nullification. He just shook his head and he says, you know what, from the court's perspective, it's a moot. It doesn't matter. It was settled during that period. Yes, we should still pursue it because we're making progress. It's a strategy that I believe is very, very effective as the states, again, the states' representatives are standing up. They're saying no. They're rejecting things. And what's really important is that when you look at nullification, that the brewer care you go in and you nullify brewer care alone, that's standing up and saying to the feds, no, we're not going to take that. Because you know what? The states, according to the Supreme Court, had the right to say no to that in the first place. Okay? So it's just reasserting your state's rights. So to pursue it at the same time, I think it is an absolute strategy that we have to do at the same time. And you know what it does? It drives to that compact, because as what we're seeing is that the nullification, and I'll tell you what, the 10th Amendment group is doing a fantastic job on that, and what they're doing is they're getting that legislation, again, common for the states. They might have to tweak it a little bit in language because of a state's constitution, but overall, what they're doing is very, very effective, saying we can get this done here, we can get it done here, and now you're building the momentum to the extent that, you know what, if you get up to that 3/4 of the states operating on nullification within the context of the states, it really does nullify an act of Congress. Okay? It really does, because now you have, in effect, a quasi Convention of the States. Okay? Sir, all the way in the back, would you come to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Howdy, my name's Dave. I'm known to several people here. First time actually this month coming to the Tea Party meeting, and I will say this, being somebody raised by the state here in Arizona, I know that they do not educate you on this. They do not want you to know these things, and hence it is very important that we do get together and teach each other, and those that don't know, learn about the process. And I will agree, sir, it is a very slow process. It is not meant to be a quick process. That being said, there has to be a contingent, as there was in the past, and I guarantee you there's a contingent now, that are ready to take that next step if they don't pay attention to what we're saying. And we have to, by rule of law, go through the process. That being said, I personally am starting a gun club that anybody here is welcome to join. We have all types of people, mothers, singles, young, old, veterans, and not. And that's what we want. We want to get these people together, conversating, getting it together, and figuring out what the process is, what we have to do. And then when that doesn't work, like I said, I'm the first one to start a gun club. I practice every Sunday shooting, and they don't want people like me out there speaking, saying these things, because we rile people up. We get people upset, and that's what politics is supposed to do. That being said, there is always that contingent ready to take the next step if it doesn't work. Be true, understand that. Everybody knows that. And if you don't know who they are, then you should get out and meet them. We meet every week. We try and get together, not just here, but to discuss all sorts of things, and that being one of them as well. Thank you for your time.
You bet. You bet. You know, I always tell people when, you know, I flip into the past, is that Samuel Adams was the first prepper. You know, because what Samuel Adams told the people in Massachusetts to do, he told them to prepare. He told them to get their goods together, save up their food, take and build their own arms. And on top of that, what Samuel Adams told the people of Boston and Massachusetts to do was to practice daily military skills.
Absolutely.
Samuel Adams said that to the people of Boston. Wow. Anyway.
That's your opinion.
Yes.
I can answer the one question. The gentleman who's leading up or heading up the compact from the Goldwater Institute is the attorney for the Goldwater Institute, Nick Dranius. He's the one that started and is heading up the compact. The other thing is, if anybody's been paying attention to the Convention of the States, there are more and more states that have actually signed on to it. There's more of them. So I think what it amounts to is that all of us have to really study the Convention of the States and the compact one, and whichever one I think actually what it amounts to, because both of them are good. Is that, yeah, both, because if the compact was actually doing the 17th Amendment right now, I think we would probably be jumping on that one over the Convention of the States.
Well, the compact goes to a convention.
Right, it ends up going to a convention anyway.
It's the template for the Convention of the States.
So that's where, yeah, so they go, so they work hand in hand. So that's real, okay, that's what I was trying to understand. So really what we need to do is get behind each other, get behind people, and spread the word, and get to our legislators, get to the people, get Arizona, forget Brewer, forget she exists. Just get our legislators to understand they need to sign and get Arizona signed on to the Convention of the States and get them added in as well. I mean, there's more and more of them. I think the last one was Georgia, and I think they're going after another one. But states are signing onto it, and this is a good sign. The numbers that are getting higher and higher, and that means that people are knowledgeable and getting more disgusted. I don't know if anybody caught this one. I happened to have caught a teeny bit of it real quick today, very quickly, and I'm just was looking it up. Rand Paul filed a class action suit against not just the NSA spying, but against Obama. This is going to be the first and largest class action lawsuit ever. I was like, yahoo, this is pretty cool.
And one of the things too that I talk about when I talk about all of the different amendments is, in just a second, sir, and I'll get to you, is that when it comes to the 17th Amendment and why I think that it should be first, my opinion is that the enemy's already done its work. Some of you have already heard me say this, but for those that haven't, I'll state it. There's the fact that two very conservative professors, one from Brown University, the other one from MIT, was paid by that very conservative organization called the Brookings Institute to take and study the 17th Amendment on its 100th year anniversary. And what they came out to find is that the 17th Amendment has done nothing that it was expected to do, that in fact the Senate is more corrupt, has done worse legislation, has done all of the things that they were claiming the purpose of the 17th Amendment would fix. And then you, every one of you, paid for another study by the same two very conservative professors that was paid for by the National Science Foundation. Your tax dollars. Very statistical study. You would expect that out of the National Science Foundation. That study showed that if there was no 17th Amendment, because of the states and where the state legislatures are today, that the Senate would be held in the majority by Republicans, by 52 or 53. And that is because the various states' legislatures are held in Republican hands. So when you think about those numbers and what else, as who are signing on also, those are those legislatures that understand the compact and understand what it means to have a convention of states. Those are the very same ones that are signing on to these things because they already understand it. So, you know, that's, again, I think that the 17th is an easy target because the enemy did all the work to prove that it's ineffective. But, you know, that, again, is my opinion. One more question, gentleman in the back. John. And then we'll wrap it up with this question.
Actually, there are a couple of things. First, I'm glad you brought up the 17th Amendment. I'm very passionate about it myself.
You're here.
When Wilson and company pushed through the 17th Amendment, they effectively eliminated the state's voice at the federal level.
Yes.
Which basically ripped the heart out of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So for 100 years, we have been getting scrogged.
I can tell you talk sailor often as well.
I was only a sailor for 2 years. I was a GI for 13. But that's another story. In the Arizona House, there is a resolution that has passed out of committee. I am not 100% sure of the number. For some reason, HCR 2027 sticks in my mind, but I can't guarantee that that's the number. It's also been proposed that this resolution could be the template used by the rest of the states for the convention. And I would like to thank you for dispelling some of the egregious, and I would go much further, but I'm trying to keep my language civil tonight.
Something about cameras behind you.
Well, yeah, that too. The egregious attempts to subvert the Convention of States movement. I'd like to thank you for presenting honest and accurate information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank everyone for being, and I hope, Francine, that it did meet some of your expectations.